The 360 on Energy and Carbon, hosted by 360 Energy. 360 Energy is a North American leader in energy and carbon reduction. Recently, we have launched the 360 Carbon Excellence Program, designed to make corporate climate change actions more effective and successful. For more information, check the link in our podcast description. Welcome back, Dave.
Thanks, Lysandra. Nice to be back. When our special guest back here as well.
Yes, welcome back, Allison.
Hello, guys.
So today's episode, I am really excited about, actually. I was hoping that we could talk about corporate expectations from new graduates, as well as new graduates' expectations of corporations. And that's something that I think we can all talk about, Dave, from the corporate side, and myself and Allison from, new hires that are looking at different companies and what we expect from corporations.
I think it's a really hot topic because people are challenged to find new and good employees. There's two sides to the coin, right? Who are you? What type of companies are out there and who are people attracted? I'm excited about this session as well, because I think it will be really helpful input that our clients or listeners will hear. And I think it'll be helpful for them. So looking forward to this. And this is directed to both of you, actually, by the way. So Allison and Lysandra, you both finishing your schooling in different capacities, by the way, both in engineering and in some fashion. But just for our listeners, what is the thing that would attract you to a company? What are the things that you want to see in a company for you to be attracted to go and work there? I'll just explain. Certainly money is always, everyone understands there's a money thing, but I actually think there's more than money. I actually think, Allison, I'll ask you if you could start with what you're looking for you to join a company. What's important?
Yeah, I mean, maybe for me, if there was just one thing right now at this point in my life, at this point in my career, it probably is flexibility, on a lot of levels. To me, flexibility ends up just being an acknowledgement of humanness of your employees, understanding that people get sick and people have bad days and people have good days and people are late, and just kind of accepting that there is kind of alternative ways to go about employing people. I'd say that's probably number one for me right now. I have a lot of ideas on, what it is for like my peers and my friends. But for me at this stage, it's probably that, I haven't had I have like some very varied background and experience in employment, but I really am still ready to be in that wiggle room and trying things and figuring things out. So for me personally, that would be number one.
Okay. How about you, Lysandra?
I'm still in the early stages of my career, but I've worked at quite a few different companies, energy, manufacturing, automotive, charities that were funded by the government, things like that, all related to engineering with that in mind. So what I find was in my first week at all of those positions, I knew exactly if I was going to like it or not. And I think it really came down to work environment. And I think if you're very in tune with how you work and how others work, you can tell pretty quickly, and you should be able to read others and kind of almost cater yourself to fit into that work environment. So for me, work environment is huge. I think I can tell quickly if it's a comfortable place to ask questions, if everyone's going to be helpful to you, if it's a bit competitive. Even though I was a co-op, there were times where I felt I was competing with people that have been there for 30 years in my previous co-op positions. And I think it was about really understanding how I fit in as a new employee and things like that. So I would say environment is very important to me.
Good answers. Actually, for some reason, I expect some different answers, so that it's important. Well, I actually thought one of the key areas is how proactive organizations are on the environment. And maybe that's just because the lens we're in.
Yeah. Well, don't get me wrong. I think Allison and I both feel very passionately about that. But I would say, think like Allison and I are both women in engineering and we're young. So when we get into an organization, unfortunately, we do need to think about those still like those stereotypes of not being taken seriously, not being seen as an equal, things like that. We still have to consider those first before our actual passion. So let's say I had a company that was, very passionate about energy and like environmental things and everything I'm passionate about, but they don't treat me the same. Unfortunately, for myself, I would need to go somewhere that maybe is a bit behind, but still values me as an equal employee first.
You know what? I have to tell you, Lysandra, I understand what you've just said. It just foreign to me that people would think that way, but I do appreciate and accept that there's some organizations that have the old way of thinking. And,
Yeah.
like it doesn't matter to me, sex, religion, color, whatever. If you've got the right attitude, everyone should respect you, but I guess we all live in different times. So, okay, I thank you for sharing that. And I'm sorry I didn't really accept or appreciate that as much as an issue. So thank you. Now, my question to you, and it's somewhat similar, but so what do you think new graduates are looking for in an employer per se?
Okay, so this one, I think I can now tell you kind of what everyone I know is thinking about, even, all sides of the spectrum. Because for me, probably, again, flexibility like is really high up there. But this is actually something I talk about with my friends a lot right now. We're in this position, on the precipice of careers, and a lot of my friends have already graduated, are already in their first roles outside of graduation. So, yeah, like you said, benefits, a pension plan, good pay. These are dignity things. If you feel like you're being treated with dignity for your work, you will earn it. That's just a genuine consideration. Love to see employers investing in their employees. So, training, any staff development, conferences, just a commitment to kind of creating a cooperation between employee and employer, interest in helping employees achieve their goals. Your career is a big part of your life. And if your employer acknowledges that and helps you along your journey, that's really important to see. Love to see reward for loyalty, ethics. Obviously, playing into ethics is going to be what you mentioned before, the sustainability. I consider that ethics. That's a basic requirement for me in a business. If you can treat that environment with respect, I really hope you can treat people with respect. You can treat all people, equally in the way they deserve. This is just kind of part of the parcel for me. Trust is helpful. If I'm trusted, I will act like I'm trusted. Obviously, it's not that simple, but a lot of the time it is. And then there's kind of more of the human side of it with kind of like Lysandra said, like nice people, a community, personable interviewers, just a sense of we spend a lot of time together in our day to day. So we better get along. Like you can have a really lovely job, but if you can't feel comfortable asking your boss for a day off, then you'll be miserable. If you can't have a conversation about what you need to be supported in the workplace, if you're going through a hard time or something like that, then that creates a layer of stress that I just don't think should be a part of your everyday life. You can avoid it. So playing into that, regular meetings, check-ins, consistent feedback on like meeting expectations. That's just healthy communication in this employer-employee relationship. Boundaries outside the workplace. I know people who have been in good jobs, but been driven out of them because their boss called them 3 times on their day off. It can be a deal breaker as well. There's transportation support. There's kind of jokes about our generation not being able to afford houses or cars or anything, but it's not quite a joke.
It's not a joke, is it? No.
It's very good.
A joke to someone else, but it kind of stings every time they say it. No, so support with transportation. Is there paid for bus tickets? Is there encouragement to bike? This is also an environmental thing, carpooling and alternative transportation. That's also part of the ethic. And then this is a bit more of a weird one, but a lot of the time I'll talk with my friends about ergonomics of an office and having, I know it seems little, but chair that you're not in pain sitting in makes your work day a lot more productive. So there's something worth considering. That can be like a costly process, but it is something worth considering if that's something employees have brought to attention. And then finally, I know this is a lot, but one more bit would be the quality of the business's work. Do you have certifications, awards, or is there just proof that this business cares what they're putting out into the world? Because I care what I'm putting out into the world. I'd like to be a part of an organization that also does. So this is like an overall picture, a conglomeration of what everyone I am talking to in this position is saying. So different things on this list would be non-negotiables for different people. It depends who you are, your background, your privileges. But yeah, this is kind of a broad picture if you're looking for a laundry list.
It's a great list. Thank you for
Amazing.
sharing that. And Lysandra, do you have anything you want to add?
Yeah, I mean, Allison said so many great points. And I think when we're thinking of all these things, I do want to emphasize that as new graduates, we do understand that different levels of organizations are able to offer different things. So, for instance, I worked at a global organization. It's a global manufacturing company. And actually, Allison, I had an ergonomic expert fit me on my first week of co-op to my desk. So, they have those things to be able to do that. But as a new graduate, I'm very understanding. Depending on the level of the company I'm going to get different things kind of given to me. And I don't want to sit here and say, well, we expect every single company to do all these things for us. We know that's not possible. We're just kind of expressing, where the generation is heading and expecting. For me, I also found that, different sizes of organizations are able to provide you with those fulfilling things in different ways. So the global one that I worked at, we would do so many in community things. We had different groups like we had a diversity and inclusion group. We had a women in engineering group, all that type of thing, because that organization was big enough to do something like that. Now, if we're looking at, let's say 360 Energy, for example, I am comfortable here because I know that, I can call Dave and Dave will pick up the phone and be a support person to me. You don't exactly get that at a big organization. So I do just want to emphasize that we understand that there are pros and cons to each level. For me, looking in an employer, I would just say I like to feel valued from my work. So if I do something, I do like to receive either a response or constructive criticism. I don't like just doing something and there being like radio silence. So I think for me, I would always want to be pushed more. I don't like always being told that work is good work. I think that keeps you in a comfortable spot. I think there should always be something that kind of pushes you to be better. So I like a challenging workplace. So, constantly getting different things thrown at me so that I can be a better employee. And I also want to emphasize as new graduates, like Allison mentioned, we currently can't purchase a house because of the current markets. So, new graduates do tend to bounce around jobs in their early careers because bouncing around jobs gets you a higher pay. I mean, there's tons and tons of articles about that and recommendations of how long should you work at your first workplace. So I would just say if you have a new graduate that you really enjoy at your workplace, keep in mind that unfortunately, even if we do love working for you, we do want to buy a house. So wage is very important nowadays.
Very
Yeah.
much so. And it should be.
Yeah.
I think any employer should appreciate or understand that, you have your own personal requirements and that needs to be taken care of. That needs to be understood. And Sandra, I think it's another valid point that different organizations will bring different value streams. Large organizations, certainly they probably have a lot more capability of doing different things for you that maybe smaller organizations don't. So it will come down to what you really need and what you want to do. So thank you for sharing that.
If you haven't worked in both, then you don't really understand the difference. So if that's something like I always recommend, trying it for yourself. I was lucky enough to have a co-op program where I could, bounce around different jobs. I mean, I've done 4 co-ops now and I've had external jobs outside those co-ops to test out what I like. And I think since I've been able to experience it and I talk to friends who've experienced it, we both like completely different things. So it's tough because we're all still trying to figure out what we like.
Right.
Yeah, on that, there's huge benefits to a small business that you will never see in a big business. A lot of the times in a big business, you can really feel like you're just shouting into the void, kind of what Sandra was saying. So yeah, that also is personal preference. I have friends who've worked in a small business and been like, I can't do it. They're not organized enough, But I've had friends who worked in a business and been like, I can't do it. They don't know my name. So It depends what experience you've had and what works for you. Again, like these are laundry lists and different things are non-negotiable for different people. So yeah, totally.
Yeah, it's
I-
interesting because, Dave, you know that I like to put my Christmas tree up in November. What boss knows that? You know what I mean? In a big organization. So you lose out on some things, but again, there's pros and cons to both.
Very much so. I think one thing is really important for yourselves and for the employer is to actually understand, be able to explain the culture to the person that you're interviewing. Not only because, like you, Lysandra, I've gone into organizations and I realized pretty quickly in the first week, this isn't really an organization I'm going to do well in. So I think it's imperative for employers to try to convey and make sure the employee has a good understanding of the culture because, it can be a little scary if that's not truly understood. It's probably not going to last too long if it's not stated correctly. So it's really important that that's conveyed by the employer to people as well.
Yeah, Dave, I want to say you do ask those questions too, which I really appreciate of having you as a boss, is that you do ask me, you're like, do you like this? And I can tell you, no, I don't. And you'll laugh and you'll be like, okay, so what do we want to do? And I think having that relationship, makes it easier to come into work and not feel that anxiety of, oh, I'm going to have to do something I feel like I don't know, or I feel like I don't like to do. So that's definitely a perk.
Yeah, and Lysandra, you're right. They have a different way. Like it's their way or the highway, and there's some companies that are really successful
Yeah.
in that way. That's not how we roll. But anyhow, I think every employer might be different.
Allison Space, when you said they're successful, yeah, their employees probably aren't lasting long. You're like,
Monetarily successful, but that's not how we value things
yeah,
in human life.
I would agree. Now so for our listeners, we're not a big shop, but I actually take great pride in employees' growth. And when or if they go on to other things, I'm actually still interested to see how successful they are. Because I like to think the exposure they got in our organization in some fashion would benefit them. And I only say that because when my first job coming out of university, it was probably one of the most exciting, most challenging jobs that I ever had. But I still use a lot of those practices in what I do today. And I'm hopeful and I think employers should think about that you can actually make the world a little better, making sure that the employees are in a position to grow and do things as they grow. So I'm not sure how many people do that, but I think it's a good thought process.
Yeah, that's a really good point. I mean, knowing you have someone in your corner that's like, yeah, you've got this, you can do it. I just want you to do the best that you can in anywhere you go. Like, that's hugely influential, on someone, especially someone at the beginning of their career, to have that trust. You want to live up to expectations.
yeah. Dave, I've had
And
this go ahead.
no, you go ahead, please.
I've had this conversation with you, but I always kind of say you don't want an employee that's working for you that doesn't want to be there. There's
No.
so many people out there looking for a job that wouldn't you much rather have an employee that's passionate about where your business is headed now? And I think if employers can accept that, I think you can let your employee leave on a good term. And I have so many friends right now that are out of university that got their first job and already on to their second or third job. And hearing the stories of how some of their bosses took the news, it's like not when they come back and tell us, none of us are ever going to apply to that company because it just felt like they did so much work there. And then their boss was like, oh, you're leaving? Okay, bye. Or some didn't even say bye to their employee. And I think that, the way how you accept someone leaving your business says more about your business to me than, actually the employment process.
That's a
Yep.
really good.
Yep. I totally agree. I am going to sort of move into our next question. And the question is, how important is a business sustainability plan or record to you both? So, Allison, do you want to start that off?
Sure. I mean, we kind of touched on this before, like some of the limitations of being a new grad. I would say ethically, it's a non negotiable to me. But yeah, I'm at the beginning of my career. I can't walk into a place and like make demands and be like, you better do this. I'll get fired. That's not how it works. But a lot of life is devoted to a career. So in the long term, if you want my loyalty, if you want my continued work and excitement about a pace of business, I'm not going to invest myself in something that brings bad into the world. I have a very strong belief in needing an environmental ethic and developing this human environmental ethic with the land, with the world. And so I'm not going to pour my energy, my life hours into something that doesn't in the long term. Again, as a new grad, there's limitations. And then logically, if you have accepted the reality of the climate crisis, then, there are consequences and they're already occurring. And, depending on the privilege of people in the place, people are being impacted differently. It's not a fair game, but there's fallout and there's going to be continued fallout. And I don't want to contribute to that. I think that's a very bad thing, a bad part of the way that we're functioning as a society right now. And then I want to know that the business is prepared. That's job security. If your business is not acknowledging the climate crisis and the necessity of sustainability, then I am not confident that you will survive, the next 5-10 years. It's also an element of job security, knowing that the business is on top of that, is prepared for the changing environment, changing priorities in society. So a non-negotiable with the caveat of I understand I'm at the beginning of my career and I cannot demand things of people,
But you certainly can research
Oh
the
yeah.
company.
Great
So,
points, Allison. Yeah. Just looking at
yeah,
the question. Yeah. Looking at the question, I see we have how important is a business's sustainability plan or record to you? And for me, plan and record are a little interesting. So, record, we're thinking of past, and plan, what we think we're going to do in the future. Now, those are two things that you kind of can't change. So, to me, I don't really care about record because I think there's always room to improve unless it's really reckless. But I prefer to think of action. So, if I see a business actually doing the things they're promising, that means something to me. I get tired with empty words, like even in regular conversations. I hate when people just spin around and like make empty promises. Like it really irks me. My family knows, so they ask me the same thing like 5 times just so I can start getting mad. So when I think of a sustainability plan or record, you can say these things and you can promise these things, but if you're not doing them, it doesn't, I don't care. I want to see actual action. So to me, I would say if a business is putting things into action, great business. If they're just saying things and you come in and you have, you know, your welcome week is like filled with all this, like, oh, we do this, and then they don't even recycle. I'm like, okay, congratulations, you faked it. I prefer to actually see things in real life and actually witness businesses' sustainability plans.
Yeah, that can really degrade trust in the honesty of a business. If you're just lying, I can't stand for that. Life's too short to work somewhere where people are lying.
Agreed. Especially about lying about doing a good thing. Like, that's the worst lying you could do, I feel like.
Totally.
are we talking example like greenwashing, saying something, but really there's nothing behind it? Is that an
Yeah.
example?
Yeah.
I think a lot of organizations aren't aware that that is going to be a haunting issue. They can't say things now in the future because people like yourself who are really smart will figure out pretty darn quickly that this isn't real. So
Yeah, and we have the access to the information these days. I can look it up. I can see what you're doing, and I will.
right.
I even think like you can tell by your boss or, whoever's in charge of you's actions, like how they mention it. Like, oh yeah, that plan, yeah, like don't worry about it. Like when you ask like, oh, don't we have that to meet? And they're like, oh, don't worry about it. I'm like, okay, so you're just emptily saying all these promises and you actually don't care about it. So I think it is pretty easy to tell, where someone stands. So to all of our, maybe managers, business owners listening, your employees do pick up on those on how you talk about, your plans and your sustainability outlook.
I'm going to say to you, and you guys probably already know this, like the things have changed where before there was always a ton of people that you could find to do jobs. That world's changed. So now not only do you have to try to find someone, but you want to try to find someone that's really good that can move the dial, right? And so what does that mean? That means that employees in the marketplace or employers in the marketplace really need to be very mindful of everything you just said. To be fair, you'll want to know sometimes it's scary because you're, how am I going to do this? But employers are going to have to if they want to retain and keep good people.
Well, Dave, you've heard quite a few of mine and Allison's opinions, so I'm going to flip this on you for a second. With your experience in having students in the business or new graduates, what do you find different in the hiring process and employment?
So I'm really fortunate because we've had a good run in the last few years, and you guys are two examples of that. I'm going to convey to you, I think the process that we followed, I would encourage others to do. So, one, I actually, in interviewing, I really want to get a sense of the person's integrity and their passion. So, like, they have to be passionate about something. If there's not a passion, then it's hard to get them excited about what they want to do and how they want to do it. That's really important to understand who the person is and how that takes, and does that fit in the culture? Like, that's another thing. Everyone's got different cultures. So, what would work at 360 may not work. But I'm going to convey that's to me, like what you both have expressed your passion and what you like. And so it's a really important thing to hear. Second thing that I would say that's been invaluable to us is actually working with universities on projects. Lysandra, you're an example of us working with the university, and you were one of the people that were working on that project. And we could see, I remember meeting you. I remember the first meeting and how you took control of the meeting, going, I got to hire her. And so that was like a test run. And then with Allison had some competition that she was facing against. But when I met her and then I sensed of who she was and her integrity and what she wanted, I think, no, well, the other people may have seemed like they had a lot more skill set, but I thought, no, this girl's got this shazazz, and I think I can, if I can get that to blossom, I can like fly. And and so I think that, and then the last thing, which is you both in this program, is co-ops. Like, bring people in for co-ops and make sure you allow them to blossom. Don't put them in a friggin' corner and say, okay, that's all you do. I mean, that I know that happens with big corporations, and I respect, again, that's the cultures are different, but I like to load people up. Like, let's put you into something that you never thought was possible, but support you to ensure that you can do it. And I have, from my experience over the last couple years, and both of you have been involved in that, is give you things that maybe you thought weren't possible or you didn't think you could do. Ellison, you talk about the energy markets. Lysandra, you are doing stuff that other people in the greenhouse industry haven't even considered. Like, you're so far ahead. So that, like, allow youth to empower them to be able to run and do things that they weren't thinking possible. And if you do that, in my personal opinion, if you can find that group or people, they're fantastic employees. But you have to get the ground fertile to make sure that you're empowered to do that stuff. Because if you don't support you, if you don't challenge you, if you don't, then you're not going to get that result. So that's what my experience is. I've found the co-op program, the exposure, the schools, what they've done, really, really helpful for me personally. Anyhow.
I do want to emphasize one of your points. Allison and myself both had very little or none energy experience before coming into working at 360 Energy. But Dave, I think you saw again our passion and you realized that those skills are easier to train. You can't train passion. You can't make someone passionate, unfortunately. So I do want to emphasize, I think a lot of hiring managers will sit there and they'll maybe look at skills over passion, or you kind of look at it on paper and you see this person's a better hire than this person. But I bet you if you hired both people and you saw how far one went, typically the passionate person is going to do more than the skill set person, because we have that fire. We want to be better. We want to prove to you why hiring us was the best choice.
So I have done both, and I've learned exactly what you just said. Like, if someone with passion, in interest in what they do, will go much further, and they're team players, right? You could have superstars that are superstars, but they're not team players. Again, the culture we have, it's very team oriented. So like you need to be able to work with your team members and assimilate in that group as well. So that's really important. But again, the cultures will be different and different people have different needs or requirements.
Well, to end off this episode, I'm going to pass this question around. What is some advice you have for corporates looking to hire new talent? Allison, you can start us off.
I think what you two are just talking about is major. Take a chance on a candidate. Think outside the box. Just exactly what you guys are saying. You want to prove them right. You know, it's really interesting what Dave bringing me in did, because yeah, I didn't have any experience. There's no reason for him to believe that I could attain this knowledge except for just looking at who I was as a person. I've had those interviews where they score you on skills. You get a 1 to 10 on each question, and it doesn't really capture the essence of the person. I feel like you really miss out on something. So I would really bargain, take a chance on a candidate. I don't think I've ever applied for a job I was qualified for. It's a lot more fun learning. That's something to consider. And then I know this is a big ask of people, but let go of old ideas of business and money making. We're in a new time, in all the human history, we have never had work like this where, it's mostly computer work. It's harder to you feel like you're doing something valuable. You're doing something because you're not doing anything physically. You can't see your progress. So yeah, think differently. Just because these old models have been what we've done doesn't mean they're right. Obviously, I mean, that's a basic fundament. Just because something has always been done that way does not mean it's the right way. So try and, spice it up, think a little differently. And just remember that an employee is giving you their time. That is literally the most valuable resource they have to give of all, the most finite resource you have. So there's nothing you can give that will be an equal in return for that time that an employee is giving you. But humans want to work. They want purpose. It is just your job, employer, as a boss, to facilitate that and make it a fulfilling experience. This is people's lives, and it's your job to facilitate that. So just think a little differently. Think a little outside the box. See what you can come up with. That would be my advice.
Great advice, Allison. Dave?
This sounds like a broken record because I've said this in many podcasts, but it's youth. It's people your age and younger that are going to make the game changer. And so the sooner we can get you involved in businesses, the sooner we can empower you and give you experience, because some stuff you don't know, but the more we can give you exposure and experience, the faster, not only will you excel in your career, but actually will make society better. But I want to be clear, like not everyone's made the same. So you've got to do the vetting and qualifying and try to find those people that are of purpose. I thought that was a great comment, Allison, and have passion. And man, when you find that, you got magic. I'm not sure I'm saying anything different than any other employer, but it's certainly youth is if you're trying to grow your business and you want it, like they got to be involved. And the last thing I want to say, because I did say it, the organization that I came out of school, they hired every year 20 university grads, and we all worked together and we all challenged each other. And I thought, wow, like that's the model. And so I think, again, I'd encourage employers to really engage and get the youth involved.
Yeah, Allison and Dave, I think you both kind of touched on the importance of the selection process of new talent. I want to emphasize, that first week, that first month, you've chosen a great candidate that you thought can really excel your business. Now make sure you continue to monitor that status. Make sure you're checking in, make sure you're asking them if they're enjoying the task that they're doing. If not, maybe find where they can, be put in elsewhere. I think a lot of times we could be a perfect fit, but if the work relationship is not there, it's not going to be at 100% of both potential. So I would just emphasize to make sure that you're really nurturing that new talent and giving them the attention that they need.
Well, Sandra, great comments, and something that for sure I can tell you in my past probably wasn't that consistent or did that. I was a small business owner, you tend to be busy. But I read a book like 6 months ago and said that any chief executive officer should actually be a chief human resource officer. That's really to keep people and good people. You got to focus on them. So I think your comments are really good and really important for people to understand going forward.
Well, this was a great episode, Allison and Dave. Thank you so much for taking time out of your day to discuss corporate expectations with me.
Well, thank you both for your input.
Thanks so much for having me, guys.
That's all for today's episode of the 360 on Energy and Carbon podcast. Thanks for listening. Make sure to check us out on our website at 360energy.net and follow us on LinkedIn at 360 Energy Inc. Tune in to our podcast on Apple Music, Spotify, Anchor, or other listening platforms by searching the 360 on Energy and Carbon. You can watch the video recording and subscribe on YouTube at 360 Energy Inc. Email us your feedback at podcast@360energy.net or comment on our LinkedIn posts. See you next week.